What's up, everyone? For most of 2025 so far, we've been getting a lot of new custom tracks for CTR, and honestly, it is pretty cool that so many people are actually interested in making custom tracks for CTR. There were a lot of tracks that I had fun playing, like genuinely. There were a lot of really cool tracks, and custom tracks also changed a little bit how I look at CTR as a game as a whole. But nonetheless, I'm also gonna be brutally honest here. Most of the custom tracks that I played were actually pretty fucking garbage. I know this sounds mean, but most custom tracks are simply not good. And I am aware that, hey, this track is garbage is not constructive criticism, so this is basically why I made this video. I made this video to go a little bit into detail about what actually constitutes a good custom track, what makes a custom track good, what makes a custom track bad. To maybe shed some more light on, okay, how should you approach the track design process to make a track that is actually enjoyable to play. And I hope it helps people. Maybe, I don't know, I do this without a script. I'm just playing, talking, rambling about custom tracks now, so I don't know. Let's get started. So when looking at the quality of a custom track, there's basically three different aspects that I wanna talk about. One aspect is gonna be the gameplay, like how does your track play, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much just it. Gameplay is gameplay. There's not much to explain, honestly. Second part is gonna be the track design itself. Those are gonna be things like layouts, shortcuts, and the overall thought process of, okay, how did you design your custom track. And then the third one is gonna be visuals. But when talking about visuals, I don't mean aesthetics, but rather I'm talking about visuals as a means of accessibility. So this is gonna be a little bit different from what you expect probably, but I hope I'm gonna be able to convey it in a manner that makes sense. Who knows. And the first aspect that I want to talk about is gameplay. And I already have the perfect track loaded to talk about gameplay. I basically want to talk about common mistakes that are being made when it comes to the gameplay of custom tracks. And I think Neon City is a prime example of what I want to talk about. So the thing is, when you design a custom track for CTR, you have to consider that CTR is quite a complex racing game. The CTR engine has a lot of different physics and techniques baked into it. You obviously have power sliding. Power sliding is the one that everyone knows about, but then at a more fundamental level, speed. How does speed actually work, and the different fire levels that exist. You have things like frogging, U-turning, hang time boosts, or by extension also mid-air turbos. You have Zafi fire, you have USF as well. USF is also a mechanic. Yeah, so there's a whole load of different techniques and mechanics that the CTR engine offers, and I think when making a custom track you need to consider all of this. Yeah? It makes sense to do this, because if you don't consider these things, your track will mostly end up being garbage. And Neon City is a good example. So what's bad about Neon City? So if you look at the track like this, yeah, you see, okay, it's a futuristic city. It looks okay. It's not a masterpiece of art, but it does look good compared to other custom tracks. So in terms of visuals, everything seems to be fine, but the track is completely flat. The track is flat, and that is one of the most common mistakes that I see. I mean, honestly, this track is also a Speed Freaks port, one of those lazy ports from other games. I mean, most people just port tracks from Super Mario Kart or Mario Kart DS, any Mario Kart game. And then also Speed Freaks, Formula Karts, I think there's one track as well there. So basically it's just lazy porting. And obviously in those games you don't have these complex driving mechanics as in CTR, right? So basically, the tracks are flat in those games, and they are being ported like that to CTR. But the thing is, with flat tracks take away a lot of the game mechanics that you could otherwise use in the original game. For example, if the track is completely flat, there's no way for you to get a hang time boost. You cannot jump off of anything, you cannot do any mid-air turbos to, you know, increase your reserves. And you also cannot get any speed goes as well, yeah, because if there's no downhill and the topology is completely flat, then you essentially strip CTR of half of what makes the game actually fun. So flat tracks are just gonna be super fucking boring, like Slide Coliseum. I mean, Turbo Track is a different story because it has USF pads, but we're gonna go into USF later as well. So yeah, basically this track is completely flat, and so it's boring. The track is completely boring. Like, yeah, it features this one gimmick here where it's like, oh yeah, the shortcut is only available in lap 3, but that doesn't make a track good, yeah? If this track was any good, the gameplay would be a lot better. Visuals don't matter. The track can be as pretty as it wants, but this track is fucking boring. I played it and I didn't like it. Yeah, because it's boring, it's a completely flat track, I cannot do anything. Half of what makes CTR fun is not available on this track. Yeah, and that's bad. So this is one mistake that I see a lot of people make, is that they make flat tracks. And I know why, because a lot of people are also not good at playing CTR. Yeah, you cannot make a good track if you are not good at playing the game, or if you at least don't have a good understanding of how the game actually works. Yeah, so keep this in mind. Flat tracks are pretty bad. Try to create a topology that allows you to get hang time boosts, jump off of things, maybe create some gaps. Like, this is a continuous track, it's completely flat, you cannot jump anywhere, no hang time boosts, no speed goes, and it's all just power sliding, reserve stacking, and it's just like half of the game basically. Like, you created a track that eliminated half of the game, and that's not cool. So this is the first mistake. And now let's look at the second mistake. So this next track is going to be an interesting one. It's another port from Mario Kart because, I mean, all the bad examples are just gonna be ports at this point. Delfino Square or Delfino Plaza, I actually have no idea how the track is called. I don't play much Mario Kart. Anyhow, this is the track. Obviously at first glance we can see it basically does the same mistakes that Neon City is also doing. It's a completely flat topology, which means there's no speed ghosts you can really use. You cannot get any mid-air turbos except one at the start and at the end of the ramp theoretically. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this beautiful ramp here. Blue turbo pads. Who doesn't love to see them? Yeah, USF. I don't even know where to begin. So I actually hate USF, which will probably sound a bit crazy considering I do actually like CTR as a game. But there are a bunch of different issues I have with USF. So for starters, when you build USF into a custom track, or yeah, any track at all, you need to consider the effects that USF has on the overall gameplay. Yeah? So to give you a quick reminder, USF is the maximum possible speed. Yeah? So USF is the maximum possible speed that the CTR engine allows, and if you get any sort of boost, which includes a hang time boost, or if you power slide, you lose USF immediately, and you also lose it if you run out of reserves. So basically, while having USF, there is actually not a lot you can do, because almost any action would make you lose USF again. And USF is about, I think it was 80% faster than base speed compared to Sacred Fire. Sacred Fire is usually about 30% of the base speed. No, not 30% of the base speed, it's 30% faster than base speed. Which means USF is quite significantly faster than Sacred Fire. And Sacred Fire is usually the highest speed you get on a track. So USF is the maximum possible speed, and it is much faster than Sacred Fire. So what this means is, if you have a track that features USF, the optimal strategy is usually to keep USF for as long as you can. Because USF is crazy fast. It is significantly faster than any other speed you could possibly attain. And this is a problem, because usually if you have a track like this, remember this track completely flat topology, and there are also no gaps. Yeah, as I said in the beginning, this track does the exact same mistakes as Neon City. It's a continuous track, there is no gaps, there are no forced jumps, which means if you get your hands on USF, you can basically keep it for as long as you have reserves, or as long as you don't do any mistakes that would make you lose USF. And this is a problem. This is a problem because most of the time USF is faster than even taking a shortcut. With the 25% rule in place, and I'm gonna talk about the 25% rule later on as well, you cannot really make an intended shortcut that saves a significant amount of time, because if it cuts more than 25% of the track, you get respawned unless you hit an NMC or you go from section A to C, from C to A. But anyhow, USF is usually faster than taking a shortcut. And this is problematic because this track actually also has multiple different paths. So if we take a look at the track design, then we can see there are a number of different paths that you can take. So right here at the start, for example, you actually have a little shortcut. This cuts about 2 seconds, I would say. It cuts like this plaza part here. And there's also off-road shortcut in the end where the pier is. And now the thing is, when you go through the track, if you want to go fast, you will now think about, okay, what path do I need to take to be as fast as I can? And this is where it gets interesting. I actually did this. I did a bunch of testing, and in this example, so this is a PB. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a PB. It's just a time. It is a time that I got. And here I basically drove the track as I assume the author intended. So basically in all 3 laps I took the plaza shortcut, which I demonstrated just now. I skipped the off-road shortcut because the off-road shortcut is always a time loss. Jumping over the water is much faster, because the off-road shortcut is just not worth it. So that route is useless. Always jump over the water, it's much faster. And then I tried to get as much reserves as I could, and I kept USF for only small parts of the track. And then in all laps I again took the plaza shortcut, which gave me a 158. Now I did another strategy, which is this one here. The lap times look a bit crazier. So in the first 2 laps I completely avoided the plaza shortcut, and I even went wide a little bit just to stack reserves. And in lap 3 that allowed me to keep USF for the entire lap, basically. I actually made a mistake. I missed a boost. A USF lap is usually like a low 30, so here I lost a second because I missed some boosts, but I didn't really try to optimize it, I just wanted to demonstrate it. So basically, USF is so fast that the strategy in lap 1 and 2 is just getting reserves, because a full USF lap saves much more time than any other shortcut on this track. And that's a problem. So this time could go lower. It could be like 155, 154 even, if someone wants to grind it. I won't, because the track is boring. It is boring because it features USF. I don't like USF because it cuts out most of the game. You cannot power slide, you cannot get any SGs. I mean, you can, they are just useless. You cannot get any hang time boosts. It's just boring. You are just driving and steering, and that's literally all you do, and for me that's just not exciting gameplay. So tracks that have USF yeah, most of the time they just end up being tracks where you grind reserves and then you just keep USF for as long as you can. And Delfino Square is a prime example of this. So this is another common mistake that I see with a lot of custom tracks, is that they put USF on a track, but the author doesn't think about, okay, what is the consequence of putting USF on that track. And here in Delfino Square, the consequence is basically, yeah, the optimal strategy is just grinding reserves and then keeping USF for an entire lap. Like, the plaza shortcut is completely useless actually. So yeah, that is the consequence. So yeah, that is what I wanted to say about USF. So for the past 10 or 15 minutes or so, I basically just ranted about, okay, what are people doing wrong when creating custom tracks? And now I want to go a little bit into a different direction. I want to showcase a custom track that is really good, just to see, okay, what is this track doing right in comparison. And I think there is no better example than Neon Paradise, really, simply because I think it is actually the best custom track that we have. Neon Paradise features absolutely stellar gameplay. The track features unintended and intended shortcuts, and it even has USF here at the end. And overall, the techniques required to solve this track are very difficult to execute. But let's go through the track. So immediately at the start, you can see Neon Paradise uses non-flat topology. This is already a pretty good design choice, because that means you can get already an SG here, jump into another downhill, get an SG if you want. There's a gap, which means you need to jump. You could do a midair if you want. Here's an ice section that you can froggy with maximum speed, as you can see on the speedometer. Ooh. Oh wow, I almost made that. Yeah, this shortcut is an unintended one. This is actually one of the hardest unintended shortcuts that we have in custom tracks, simply because it requires a double U-turn. Now you have to U-turn right, wait a little bit, and then U-turn left to make it. And the interesting thing is, since you are U-turning to do this shortcut, you are actually resetting your reserves. Yeah? So at some point your track basically has a reset point, which is interesting. This is interesting because you can get an SG here if you want and froggy it out, but here is a USF pad. So the thing is, even though you have all these speed goes, you still need to make sure that you have enough reserves for the STP at the end, because you don't want to waste USF. And this makes the track very complicated, because you really need to think about, okay, where do you froggy, or where do you just stack reserves to keep USF at the end. It's really a difficult track. And then obviously you have this shortcut that you need to nail 3 times, and as you can see, this shortcut is much more difficult than what it looks like, because even I can't do it most of the time. So it is quite challenging. And then obviously you also have this SG here that you could get and keep, but the question is, do you really want to do it, because you still need to get the reserves for USF in the second lap. So overall, super complex track. In my opinion, one of the best tracks that we have. No, the best track that we have. The gameplay is super dynamic. It's a very high octane gameplay actually. Like, you really need to think about, okay, what do you do in every single section? What's the optimal thing to do? Like, do you froggy it here, or do you just stack more reserves? And also the reset point with the double U-turn also means you kind of have to optimize reserves at the end if you want to keep USF. So there's a bunch of different decisions that need to be made, and the gameplay is just super fun. I really had fun time trialing this track, and think it's the best custom track that we have right now. It's just phenomenal. Like, Boxic really cooked there. And yeah, so this is an example of a custom track that's doing basically everything right. So the first part of this video is done. I talked a lot about gameplay related things now, but I don't want to make it too long. So I basically want to go into the second part of the video now, which is track design itself. This is not gameplay related. This is really just about, okay, what do you need to take care of when designing a track? How does the CTR engine work in that regard? Like, what are the limitations that you need to take care of? and yeah, what do you need to consider to not create a broken track. And so the thing is, you need to consider the CTR engine has a number of different aspects related to track design, which is the 25% rule, a very important one. You have NMZ, very important as well, mask pickups, then also how does track progression actually work in CTR, you know, like the 3 different sections, A, B and C. The start language, also a very important aspect of track design. So I want to show you some examples of tracks that are making mistakes in these areas in terms of not designing tracks in a manner that they work well with the CTR engine. So I am back on Neon City because of this. But yeah, there is a lot to unpack here. So what I just did was I basically hit an NMC. Yeah, NMZ, ooh, it's being used for CTR speedruns. I mean, Hypno does it all the time when he's doing Papu's Pyramid. This is the same mechanic. Every track has an NMC near the finish line, simply because of how the CTR engine works. Even custom tracks have NMCs. And this track has an obvious design mistake, not a visual one. No, that's not what I mean. I mean on an abstract level, a design mistake, which is that you can basically... So the finish line, even though it's supposed to be here, but it is actually here somewhere. And you can actually jump over the finish line more or less out of bounds. You can kind of just jump over the finish line, hit an NMC on the other side, and then cross the finish line, and since your track progression is being ignored, you can clear the lap in just 2 or 3 seconds. So this is an obvious design mistake. Someone was probably not familiar with the CTR engine, but if you want to be safe, if you want to make tracks that don't have this issue, just make sure you cannot actually access the finish line from the side. Just put it between 2 walls, for example, like that already solves a lot of NMZ issues. And also make sure you cannot jump near the end of the finish line to absolutely make sure that nobody can hit the spot where your track progression is being ignored. So this is the first mistake, but there is more to track design than just NMZs. So the second mistake is actually a very interesting one, and it's one that can happen even to experienced custom track creators. As we can see with Drive Through Danger, I'm going to showcase a video from Bros, which is basically his PB lab in Drive Through Danger. Reason being that he uses a shortcut that I wasn't able to do. The shortcut's actually quite difficult, so let's just take a quick glance. Oh boy. Now that was an interesting one. So what happened here? So basically, DTD has a loop somewhere near the end of the track, right? It's basically that loop that Bros was skipping just now. And the thing is, CTR allows track progression up to 25% forward at a given time. So every time you move through the track, CTR will check your progression, your current progression, and it will also check the progression of the part of the track where you want to move to, and if it's more than 25% apart, the game will basically reject it. However, that rule influences track design, because I mean, it also influences how you design shortcuts. You essentially cannot make a shortcut that cuts more than 25% of the track, but it also means if you have 2 intersecting parts of the track, then you can reach, and you can go from each of these parts to one another, CTR will basically allow that. Yeah, so there is no check happening there if this is intended or not. So if you have a looping like here, if you have an intersection, so here, the upper part of the track intersects with the lower part of the track here, and then since it's not more than 25% of the track, you can freely just skip that part because CTR allows that. Yeah, every time you make a track that has an intersection, you can be sure that someone will find a way to skip to that other part of the track that is further ahead, because CTR will just allow it. There's no restriction on it. And this is very important. Even though this track was created by Boxic, and Boxic is a very experienced track creator, but it goes to show that these unintended shortcuts, which are a result of the 25% rule, they happen even to the best track creators. So in general, this is something to keep in mind. If you have a track with intersecting track parts, make sure they are further apart than 25%. If they are not, you can be sure that someone will find an unintended shortcut there. And this happened on DTD. Bros found a skip. You can do it with Sacred Fire. It doesn't actually require USF, and it's only possible because yeah, the intersection is not far apart. So yeah, this is a very interesting thing to keep in mind. Also, one thing related to the 25% rule, you can ignore that rule if you use either an NMC, which I displayed earlier in Neon City, or if you go from section C to A. But I don't want to go into how track progression works, because then this video will be super long. So I'm gonna link some videos in the description that go more into detail about how does track progression actually work. But keep this in mind when designing tracks. The 25% rule controls from where to where you can go, and this affects the design of the track as well as the design of shortcuts. So the last thing I wanted to show is actually here on Yoshi's Circuit, which is a pretty cool thing. Ta-dum! Yeah, this is another little trick if you haven't paid attention closely. So basically you can actually jump over the finish line, which is always possible in CTR U. Yeah, so basically in the NTSC U version of CTR, you can jump over the finish line and get what is called a start line glitch by starting the lap later. And here on Yoshi's Circuit, a small design mistake was being made in that this here is basically off-road, and so CTR doesn't actually let you finish a lap while you're off-road or out of bounds. So you can basically drive here and then start the lap somewhere later by entering this point. So basically on the first instance that you go on normal road again, CTR will start counting your lap. And this is what we call the start line glitch, because your lap doesn't actually finish at the starting line, it actually finishes on the first moment that you touch solid road after the start line, after the finish line again. And since this design mistake here was being made, the start line glitch is possible. Now obviously I should say that the start line glitch doesn't really affect normal gameplay, since you're just shifting time around, but it does affect lap runs. Like if someone wants to attempt optimizing the lap time, then you would obviously use the start line glitch and start the lap somewhere here or so. Not sure how far it goes. But yeah, this is another small thing that I wanted to mention. So the last aspect that I wanted to touch on is the visual design of a track. And this is gonna be an interesting one, because it's probably gonna be a little bit different from what you expect. But I'm gonna be using Dreamy Heights here as a positive example. Dreamy Heights was also created by Boxic. Boxic is a great visual artist. And here already at the start we can see, okay, there's this here, there's a wall basically, these clouds act as a wall, and there's a clear separation, right? So everyone can see, okay, the walls are like this whitish purple tone, whereas the bottom is like yellow, orange, like a very light brown, something like that. And as you go through the track, you can also see a clear difference in height. There's like shading everywhere. So everywhere you are on the track, you actually have a good level of perception of where you are and where you are going. And this is exactly what visual design is about. So when designing a custom track, especially if you're designing the visuals, you need to make sure that the visuals provide a level of accessibility to your track. This is not immediately obvious because people have been doing these mistakes. So the visuals are basically a way for other people to access your track at a very fundamental level. And it's not about making a track pretty, but visual design should basically give you the ability to do sight reading, yeah? So even if you are unfamiliar with the track, you should be able to navigate through it if the visual design was done well. Likewise, the visual design should provide an assistance. It should allow you to orientate yourself where you are and where you are going, whether you're going forward, whether you're going backwards, whether you're going up and down. Like, all of these things are basically being provided by the visual design, and Dreamy Heights is a very good example, is a positive example of that, because you can see where you are going everywhere. Even first timers who are playing the track for the very first time can see where they are going because everything is pretty clear. But there are some negative examples, and I want to highlight those as well. So the track that I want to focus on here is SNES Donut Plains from Mario Kart. Obviously it's another port. So this track is already pretty interesting at the start because there's an invisible wall here. There is no indicator that there is such a thing. Invisible walls are generally poor video game design always. It would have been better if there were obstacles, like you could have put like a blocky wall like this one here, but for some reason it was decided to go with invisible walls. But anyhow, so already at the start I am a little bit confused because you have this pathway here which leads to the right. So in terms of guidance, visual guidance, I would say, okay, I have to go right here, but there's also a hill. There's a hill here, and if you know CTR, jumping off of things is kind of like a staple of the game. So I would expect that I can also go that way because it's a hill and I want to jump off of it. But as it turns out, if I'm jumping off of this hill, I'm just landing out of bounds somewhere in the grass. So even though this hill leads upwards, it makes actually no directional sense at all. I don't even know what benefit this hill provides. Like, you can't even jump off of it because it goes into a completely different direction. So this is a very strange decision that was made here. But that's not even the worst part. So everything in this track is in general very saturated, so it uses like a lot of different colors, a lot of saturated colors, which can be quite exhausting to look at if you are playing this track for a longer period of time. I know the game was released on SNES that had color profiles with less colors, but it's still, I do like the more desaturated colors from CTR. But anyhow, the ground uses mostly the same texture, so this is a very obvious mistake in visual design. So everything here is just brown shade, and it just keeps going through the track. Yeah, so here I have another uphill which probably leads to nowhere, so I would go that way, but then I'm seeing, oh, this is actually a shortcut. There's no indicator that this is a shortcut because you don't even see what is behind it. That's the crazy part. So essentially you have a shortcut where you actually have no idea. I mean, you don't even know that it's a shortcut because you can't see it. Yeah, there's no visual guidance that this is a shortcut because it's too high. It goes higher than most of the track because the track is mostly flat. And everything has the same shade, so depending on what angle I'm standing, it looks all the same to me. I have no sense of direction because it's just a single shade on this entire thing here, and it's just awful. And likewise, it gets even worse if you go further through the track. So here we can see, okay, we have to go that way, so that is fine. And then I see, okay, there is a bump coming, and to me this looks like a continuous bump where I can jump off, but it turns out it's actually two separate ones, so two separate elevations, and kind of like a yeah, I don't know how to call it, but there's like no elevation in the middle, so the topology here is actually completely different from what it looks like here. So this looks like a continuous bump here, but as you come near it, it looks completely different because there is no shading and everything is again same color, same texture. I have no way to distinguish all these different aspects of that topology. So in terms of visual design, this track is doing quite a lot of mistakes, and it's not the only one. Actually, many custom tracks are doing mistakes like these, where the visual design provides no guidance at all. You have no idea where you're going. You have no way to differentiate different elements. It's just not good. So please keep this in mind when doing the visual design of your track. Make sure it provides sight reading so that you know where you're going and that you can distinguish different elements of your track, and also make sure that you use visual elements that make sense. Invisible walls are not visual elements. Well, they are not because they are invisible, but in general, invisible walls are just bad design. Just don't do that. And then put a little bit of effort into your visual design, give it proper shading so that you have a sense of dimension, and yeah, that's really it. Like, look at tracks like Dreamy Heights that are really well done, that look good, and then just try to replicate that. So where are we and where do we go? It is kind of difficult to tell what's going to happen, but I mean, people are gonna be making custom tracks, so that will continue. I hope this video helps a little bit, especially for those people that are not as good at CTR, at playing the game, to give them some ideas about what to look for when creating a custom track. And I mean, there are tons of aspects of CTR that I haven't even touched on in this video, simply because if I had touched on those points, the video would be probably 2 hours long. Like, I didn't really go deep into CTR theory, like reserve spending, things like that. I mean, there are other people that have already made videos about this, so if you want some more context for some of the things that I mentioned over the course of this video, just check out the description. I'm gonna link a few videos from other players who are better than me, so you can hear their thoughts about the game and the dynamics, the various ones that are at play here. And one also thing that I want to say is, I know that I went a bit hard on some of the tracks that I mentioned over the course of this video, but consider that everyone can improve, even if you're doing something only as a hobby. A good example is Anfrost. I mean, Anfrost has been a member of the modding community for quite a while now, and when I played his first tracks, I think it was Koopa Troopa Beach, that was one of his first tracks, I thought, oh my god, this is the worst track that I've ever played. And I still have that stance about Koopa Troopa Beach, by the way. Anyhow, he actually stepped up his game and he improved. And then he dropped Jungle Boogie Engage, which is a really good track. And then he dropped Android Alley Engage, which is an absolute banger. This is one of the best custom tracks that we have, by the way. So, I mean, people can improve, and we have already seen it. So, I hope this video helps people improve a little bit faster. I think most people are also just unaware of the various restrictions. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I hope the video helps. If not, then not. Yeah, that is all I wanted to mention. Peace.